Good afternoon. Today is Friday, July 10th, 2026. You're listening to Cyber FM. I'm your host, Arias Thomas, and this is today's Cybersecurity Report, being brought to you by the RSSH Delivery Company, New York's exclusive delivery option.
You are listening to Cyber FM, hosted by Arias Thomas.
Welcome to Cyber FM. I'm your host, Arias Thomas, and I am glad that you're here. Today is Friday, July 10th, 2026. The weekend is in sight for most of us, but the criminals are hoping you've already mentally clocked out. And this week's Wire says they've been busy. This is the show dedicated to reporting on cyber warfare, and today we've got 4 fresh stories straight off the wire, and here's what they are. A ransomware crew claiming it breached one of the biggest banks in the world, not through the bank's own front door, but through a company it quietly trusted. A Vermont waste district that got tricked into wiring $3 million to a scammer posing as its own contractor, and the surprising hopeful ending to that story. A rare public admission from a national spy agency, and it went on the offensive, hacking a ransomware gang and fentanyl brokers instead of just playing defense. And a nasty new strand of ransomware that comes armed with the special tools to hunt down and switch off your antivirus before it strikes. A trusted supplier turned weak link, a $3 million wire gone wrong, a spy agency on the attack, and malware that kills the guards first. 4 battles, 1 front. Let's begin.
Story number 1, through the side door, a ransomware gang's claim against Deutsche Bank.
Our first story involves one of the largest banks on the planet, and that's Deutsche Bank, and a ransomware group calling itself Unsafe that this week claimed to have breached the bank's internal data. But here's the crucial detail, and it's the whole point of the story. The bank says its own network was never touched. The break-in, it says, happened to an outside company it does business with. Here's what we know. The Unsafe group listed Deutsche Bank on its dark web leak site, and to back up the claim, posted screenshots that appeared to show database extracts and terminal commands pulling employee records. Things like email addresses, password hashes, and mailing addresses. Deutsche Bank, for its part, pushed back firmly. A spokesperson said the incident involved a third-party service provider, and there was no indication the bank's own systems or network were affected, and that it was investigating alongside that supplier. So we've got a classic standoff. A criminal group claiming a trophy breach of a banking giant, and the giant insisting the damage, if any, sits with the vendor. What's not really in dispute is the shape of the risk. Even if this is only employee data from the supplier, that's exactly the raw material for convincing phishing emails and social engineering attacks aimed straight back at the bank's own people. And this is a pattern we keep seeing. Some of the most damaging breaches of the last few years didn't start inside the target at all. They started at a trusted vendor, a file transfer tool, or a contractor with a login. Your security is only as strong as the weakest company you've handed your data to. And the attackers have figured out that the side door at a small supplier is often far easier to force than the front door of a fortress bank. So here's the takeaway, and it's for any organization, not just the banks. Your vendor security is your security, so know who holds your data, demand real proof they're protecting it, and make sure your contracts require them to tell you fast when something goes wrong. Watch for a wave of unusually well-informed phishing after any supplier breach, because stolen employee details are what make those lures believable. In the broader lesson, you can build the tallest walls in the world, but if you've handed a copy of your keys to the small shop down the street, that's where the thief will go. Trust in a supply chain has to be verified, not assumed.
Story number 2, the $3 million email, a fake invoice, a real scare, and a rare happy ending.
Story number 2 is a cautionary tale that refreshingly ends with a bit of good news. Back in January, the Chittenden Solid Waste District up in Vermont, the agency that handles 2/3 of the state's recycling, was in the middle of building a new sorting factory when its finances team got an email. It appeared to come from the construction company they were working with, asking to update the payment details for their invoices. The team followed the instructions and wired out over $3 million. The problem? The email was fake, and the money went straight to the scammer. This is a scam business called email compromise, and it's one of the costliest in the world precisely because there's no malware or dramatic hack. just a very convincing impersonation. In this case, the criminals had done their homework. They used an email address nearly identical to a real member of the construction firm's finance team, and chillingly, even attached that real person's photo to make the request feel authentic. There was a back and forth correspondence, and the district, believing it was paying a legitimate past due invoice, sent the money in good faith. It's exactly the kind of trap that fools experienced, well-trained staff, because it doesn't look like an attack. It looks like a Tuesday. But here's where it turns around, and why this story is worth telling. The moment the district realized what happened, it did the single most important thing you can do. It immediately alerted its bank and the FBI. That speed mattered enormously. With the FBI's help, federal authorities were able to trace and freeze the funds, and the judge has now ordered roughly $2.3 million of the stolen $3 million returned. The new recycling facility is still on track. Prosecutors were blunt about the lesson. Recoveries like this are only possible when victims report the theft fast, before the money can be scattered and cashed out. So here's the takeaway, and it could save your organization or your family a fortune. Anytime you get a request to change payment details or wire money, especially an unexpected one, verify it out loud by calling the person back on a phone number you already know, never the number or reply address in the message itself. That one phone call is the entire defense. And if the worst happens and money goes out the door, contact your bank and the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center immediately. Not tomorrow, immediately. Because as this Vermont district just proved, the difference between losing everything and getting most of it back is often measured in hours.
Story number 3, hacking the hackers. A spy agency goes on the offensive.
Story number 3 is a change of pace because for once, the people doing the hacking are wearing the white hats. In its newly released annual report, Canada's electronic spy agency, the Communication Security Establishment, or CSE, made a rare public admission. Last year, it didn't just defend Canadian networks. It went on the attack, carrying out authorized offensive cyber operations against criminal groups overseas. The report lays out 3 of these operations, and they're striking. In one, the agency used its signals intelligence muscle to map out the inner workings of a ransomware as a service gang, the kind of outfit that rents its attack tools to other criminals, and then, in the agency's own framing, rendered that group's infrastructure inoperable and deleted a large cache of stolen data the gang had been advertising for sale on the dark web. A second operation went after cybercriminals brokering the chemicals used to manufacture fentanyl, disrupting their ability to operate. A third targeted an online extremist group, undermining its ability to recruit. And beyond those 3, the agency says it's carried out concurrent technical disruptions against 10 of the most significant ransomware gangs threatening Canada and its allies, not one at a time, but simultaneously. Now, spy agencies have quietly done this sort of thing for years. What's genuinely unusual here is that a government is saying it out loud, and that's the real story. Publicly confirming that you reached into a ransomware gang's servers and deleted their loot is itself a message, a form of deterrence aimed at every other crew watching, telling them the safe harbor they enjoyed is shrinking. It reflects a broader shift, where the Western governments are increasingly willing not just to defend, but to disrupt, degrade, and embarrass the criminal enterprises that have been treating extortion like a normal line of business. So here's the takeaway, and it's a bit different since there's no patch to install today, and understand that I'm just a messenger delivering information. For businesses, the encouraging news is that the biggest players are now actively hunting the hunters, but that's a supplement to your own defenses, not a substitute. The 10 gangs disrupted last year are already being replaced by the new ones. The practical value is in what these agencies share on the way. Canada's CSE alone pushed out tens of thousands of threat notifications and dozens of pre-ransomware warnings to organizations before attackers could pull the trigger. So make sure you're plugged in to the alerts your national cyber agency publishes. And the broader lesson to take from this one is the era of ransomware crews operating with total impunity is starting to close. The hunters are becoming the hunted. And this week, a government said so on the record.
Story number 4, kill the guards first. The new ransomware that disables your antivirus.
Story number 4, our 4th and final story today, is about a new ransomware family with a memorable blunt name. Goddamn. And a strategy that should make every defender pay attention. Documented by researchers at Symantec, this strand doesn't just try to sneak past your security software. It comes equipped to hunt it down and switch it off before it does anything else. Here's the technique, and it's the one we're seeing more and more. Goddamn carries with its special piece of low-level software called a driver, the kind of a deeply trusted code that talks directly to the guts of the operating system. Attackers have learned to abuse these drivers, sometimes legitimately signed ones, to reach a level of control where they can reach up and disable the security tools that would otherwise catch them. It's the digital equivalent of a burglar who, before touching the safe, first calmly walks over and cuts the wires to every alarm and camera in the building. With the guards blinded, the ransomware then does its work. And researchers note this particular family appears to be a rebrand of older ransomware, retooled and back under a new name, with the crew in one recent attack using a legitimate remote access tool and a credential stealing kit to get in and move around before deploying it. Why does this matter to you? Because it strikes at the one thing many organizations lean on hardest, the assumption that the antivirus or endpoint protection agent humming away in the background will always be there to sound the alarm. When malware can quietly turn that agent off first, a defense you were counting on can be gone before you ever see a warning. This is part of a bigger, sobering trend. The number of active ransomware and extortion groups has climbed sharply this year, and the survivors are competing on exactly this kind of stealth and evasion. So here's the takeaway, especially for anyone responsible for defending a network. Don't rely on a single layer. Assume your endpoint protection can be blinded, and back it up with defenses that the malware can't reach from the infected machine, like off-machine logging and alerts that fire when a security tool suddenly goes silent. On the technical side, turn on protections that block known vulnerable drivers from loading in the first place, since that's the trick this whole class of attack depends on. Keep offline tested backups so that even a worst-case encryption isn't the end of the world. And the broader lesson to close out today's show, when malware can quietly turn that agent off first, a defense you were counting on can be gone before you ever see a warning. This is part of a bigger, sobering trend. The number of active ransomware and extortion groups has climbed sharply this year, and the survivors are competing on exactly this kind of stealth and evasion. So here's the takeaway, especially for anyone responsible for defending a network. Don't rely on a single layer. Assume your endpoint protection can be blinded, and back it up with defenses that the malware can't reach from the infected machine, like off-machine logging and alerts that fire when a security tool suddenly goes silent. On the technical side, turn on protections that block known vulnerable drivers from loading in the first place, since that's the trick this whole class of attack depends on. Keep offline tested backups so that even a worst-case encryption isn't the end of the world. And the broader lesson to close out today's show, attackers have learned to take out the alarm system before the heist. So a quiet security tool isn't always a sign that all is well. Sometimes it's the first sign that something is very wrong. Today's episode is brought to you by the RSSH Delivery Company, New York's exclusive delivery option. When your package has to get across the city quickly, safely, and in good hands, the RSSH is the name to know. They are New York's exclusive choice and the gold standard in delivery. Rain, shine, rush hour, or heat wave, it doesn't matter. The RSSH is the name that gets it there. The RSSH Delivery Company, New York's exclusive delivery option. And that's our show for this Friday, July 10th. Let's bring the front lines together because today's 4 stories run the full emotional range of this beat. A ransomware crew claiming a banking giant's data, taking not from the bank but from a supplier it trusted. A Vermont waste district tricked into wiring $3 million to a fake contractor who did the one right thing and clawed most of it back. A national spy agency stepping out of the shadows to say out loud that it hacked the hackers, and a new strand of ransomware that kills your alarm system before it strikes. A thread running through all of this here today is 2 of today's stories are warnings and 2 are quietly reasons for hope. The warnings are familiar. Your trust is the target. Trust in a vendor, trust in an email that looks like it's from a partner, trust in a security tool that can be silently switched off. But the hope is real too. A fast phone call to the FBI brought most of that stolen money home, and the world's spy agencies are finally taking the fight to the ransomware gangs directly. So this week, verify before you wire, know who holds your data, don't lean on a single line of defense, and if something goes wrong, report it fast, because speed is the one advantage the good guys still have. Trust but verify, and when in doubt, pick up the phone. This has been Cyber FM. I'm your host, Arias Thomas, and this show is brought to you by the RSSH Delivery Company. Stay sharp, stay patched, stay secure. We'll catch you next time.
listening to Cyber FM, hosted by Arias Thomas.